What's going on, guys? Flip Masters coming at you with a new video, and today, to kind of finish off this little idol series, we'll be looking at a what if scenario, with that of course being, what if every person in Survivor vote out with an idol, play their idol. Now with these scenarios, we're not going to change anything else up besides that person playing their idol. So even though obviously in real life, the person with the idol would probably try to switch things up if they knew they need to play it, for this video, we're just going to keep things how it is, so the person with the next highest votes would go home. And obviously this is all speculation, and for some of these early boots, they're going to be really tough to speculate. But with that said, let's get this what if list started. To start us off, we have James playing his idol at the final 7 in China. Now already this is pretty interesting, because Todd is saved due to Eric's stupidity for voting James instead of Todd, and on the revote, Fei Long would vote out PG. So here's the thing. James simply has to win 2 of the next 3 immunity challenges to win, as I don't think there's a chance anyone lets him get to the final tribal council. So let's take a look at the challenges. At the final 6, he possibly wins that challenge, since PG was the one to win that challenge originally, and with her gone, obviously that would raise his chances. So let's say for the sake of video he does win. I don't think anything happens at tribal other than Eric being voted out. Then considering that the final 5 immunity challenge was a second chance challenge, I'm sure Amanda wins that. So he would be forced to use his idol at the final 5 tribal. I think the Fei Long 3 stick together and vote out Denise, and I can't imagine James risking it and playing his idol for Denise, so that puts him in a must-win spot in the final immunity challenge. And man, I don't know, because obviously that was more of a balance type challenge, but you would think having the arms James had would help. But considering I was already nice to him giving him the final 6 win, and if we go based off of history, with James obviously never winning an individual challenge, I don't think he'll be winning 2 of the next 3. So whether it's 5th or 4th place, I have James just missing out the final tribal council, and Todd still wins the game. Now on to Ozzy playing his idol to idol out Jason, and again this is probably a case where he goes the second he loses, but that's what's so great about this blind side, is that he literally could have won his way out. Or if it's a situation like where it's down to say him and Amanda and Eric at the final 5 or 6, maybe there's a chance he gets their votes. But yeah, I think ultimately it's definitely a case where he has to win out. It probably doesn't make it much farther than 9th place. And speaking of Jason, we then have him playing his idol to idol out James. And I think this is a very similar case to Ozzy in that he has to win his way out. However, I do think there is more of a reasonable chance Jason could have been used as a number for the minority as opposed to a massive threat like Ozzy. But obviously the Black Widow Brigade was unbreakable until it was absolutely necessary to turn on each other. And unless Jason pulled off 3 or 4 wins in a row, I once again don't see him getting very much farther into the game. Now into token chains with a bit of an interesting one, as Brandon plays his idol at the final 9 to save himself. Now he would lose his ally in Sierra, but I do wonder if the 5 that voted for Tyson would vote for him again at the final 8, or seeing that Brendan was obviously a much bigger threat than Sierra, they would go for him, barring Debbie once again won immunity. If I had to choose, I actually do think Brendan does survive that round, as the Jalapal crew was just so scared of Tyson. Now to be fair, I personally would have liked to see them choose Brendan over Tyson and have Tyson at least make it to the final 7. Obviously he's great TV, he would have been around Coach more. But really, I think the final 4 we got was always going to be the final 4, unless of course Brendan or Tyson went on an immunity run. So in the end, even though it would make for a couple interesting rounds, I don't think Brendan playing his idol in Tocantins drastically changes the season, and Brandon himself would finish around 5th or 7th place. Now things start to get really interesting as Eric plays his idol in Samoa to idol out Jason. Now this is the first idol played that definitely has a chance to change the course of Survivor history. So again, Jason is the one to go here, and that gives Galu 8 to 3 numbers. Now let's say this makes Eric wary, and due to not trusting Eric 100%, the 7 Galu once again put all their votes on Russell, and Kelly is the one to go home due to Russell once again playing his idol. So then comes the final 10, and this run really depends on what Eric decides to do. If he knows his best chances with the guys, he'll go with Galu. If not, then I think we get the same thing that happened in real life, a 5-5 tie with Eric being in Jason's spot and John flipping. So basically John and Eric are the swing votes in this spot. But again, they have to know that going with Fofoa and Shambo is a death sentence as opposed to teaming up with Dave and going with Galu. So I'm inclined to believe that Natalie goes home at the final 10 and Russell Hans eventually goes soon after her. And ultimately I think we get a final 3 of Dave, John, and Eric. And I have no idea where the votes go, but it's obviously pretty interesting to not only imagine a world where Russell is a jury boot, but one of these 3 winning Samoa. Obviously Dave as a Survivor winner would just be hilarious. Of course John winning would make him and Parvati the new Amber and Rob. And if Eric wins, then again that idol play at the final 12 would literally be $1 million game saver. And again, there's obviously so many unknown variables. Like obviously Russell could easily get people to flip, or find 4 more idols. Maybe Brett wins his way to the end, this time facing Galu instead of Fofoa. but I truly think the most probable outcome if Eric were to play his idol is a final three of John, Dave, and Eric. At the very least, Russell obviously has a much harder time of becoming known as the icon he is, and this just goes to show how one small change in a season can not only change the course of that season, but the course of Survivor history. Now we move on to Andrea and Karamoan, and her playing her idol forces everyone to choose between Brenda and Eddie. Obviously the threesome of Dawn, Cochran, and Sherry get to choose here, and I think they go for Eddie, as Dawn and Cochran still had somewhat of a close relationship with Brenda, and that would also break up Eddie and Andrea. But in the end, this season doesn't really change all that much, and we get the same final three. Now onto Garrett playing his idol in Cagayan, forcing Jatia to go home, and I guess this actually might change some things, as the Brains could definitely win both challenges now, especially the fourth challenge without Jatia. But even if they do lose immunity challenge, maybe Cass decides to go with Spencer and Garrett? I mean, Garrett was literally losing out there. I mean, the guy was just too shredded to be on Survivor. But it's definitely Cass and Spencer making a decision, ironically. I think if I had to guess, they would choose Garrett to go home over Tasha. But it's definitely interesting to think about how Garrett would do if he were to survive till the tribe swap. Maybe he would have continued to do ridiculous things and get voted out, or maybe him slowly fading away out there would have made him less of a threat. So yeah, obviously it's so early to really have any idea how this impacts the season, but I definitely think the Brains win the next two media challenges, which obviously gives the swap and the rest of the season different dynamics. Once again in San Juan del Sur, we get another early idol blindside with John Rocker, and the only thing this does is obviously Baylor goes home, but we get even more Rocker nonsense, and it would have been really interesting to see him swap with the numbers and or his girlfriend. But yeah, I have no idea how much this affects the season, other than more Rocker and less Misty, Baby, and Baylor around. In the same season, another player named John, this time John Mish, plays his idol, which would send Jacqueline home on the revote. And I think this really depends on who wins the reward challenge, as I think whoever has the advantage in the final 5 immunity definitely wins that challenge. And obviously being a big physical threat out there, I could definitely see John winning. So let's say he does win final 5 immunity. I can't imagine Natalie doing what she did for Jacqueline on Keith, especially since despite blindsiding him in the previous vote, John had been working with Missy and Baylor all game, and he would have the power with the immunity necklace, so I have to imagine Natalie plays her idol just in case, and Keith goes home here. And then the final immunity challenge is also a crapshoot, as now John and Baylor are competing instead of Keith and Jacqueline. But I do think this is a case where John has to win to get to the end. If John wins the final immunity challenge, Natalie's voted out. If any of the other three win, John is voted out. And whoever is sitting by Baylor and Misty wins the game, probably unanimously. So yeah, this could have potentially been $1 million idol play for John as well, as although he still wouldn't be in a good spot, he was obviously the biggest physical threat left in the game, and could have easily won those last couple of challenges, which barring some insanely risky gameplay from Natalie, which albeit she could have done, I think he wins the game. Now on to Go Wrong, where Scott plays his idol, and this is a very interesting scenario to play out. Now this is a case where I imagine if Scott played his idol, then Ty would have to play his, and in that case Aubrey goes home, which then pretty much puts Julia in the swing vote spot. But then again, Ty may officially have flipped to the girls' side after he broke Scott and Jason's trust, even though Scott and Jason did want to bring him to the end. But another big factor is that Aubrey was the one to persuade him to flip, and with her no longer there, he might have flipped back with the guys. If he does flip back with the guys, the real life plan was a Scott, Jason, Ty final 3, but maybe after seeing him flip at the final 8, they would have taken Julia instead, assuming she would have sided with them, and God knows who wins that ugly final 3. But I do think Ty does stick with the girls and Joe, as he no longer could trust Scott or Jason, and for that matter, they couldn't trust him. However, another big factor to think about is that Joe would still get injured at 5, and whoever of Julia, Scott, and Jason were left standing would now be in the final 4, along with Ty, Michelle, and Sydney. And another factor is Ty's extra vote, as he was obviously gunning for Michelle, and could have used the desperate votes of the Scott and Jasons of the world to pull it off this time. But if I had to make a final decision, I think the boot order is Scott at 7, Jason once again at 6, with Ty once again not getting the votes to blindside Michelle, Joe injured at 5, and I think whoever wins the final immunity challenge between Julia and Michelle wins the game, as Sydney and Ty were both hated by the jury, but at the same time had the power to choose who to take with them. I do think Michelle once again wins the final 4 immunity challenge, and once again wins the game, except this time beating Ty and Sydney. Now into game changes, where JT plays his idol to idol out Michaela, And again, with this being so early and a swap happening the very next episode, we can't even speculate how the next couple of episodes would have gone, much less how this affects the season. I mean, I'm sure JT flips to Culpepper's side, and in that case, that could be pretty good for his long game, as obviously, his alliance dominated the game. But ultimately, I mean, obviously JT was never win this season, and who knows how far he gets. Now we have Ghost Island, where Chris idles out Libby, and believe it or not, I think as ironic as it is, this causes Dominic to win the game instead of Wendell. So obviously Chris is still the target instead of Michael at the final 12, and is probably voted out unanimously. Now the big question is if the final 11 plays out the same as it did in real time. If Desiree goes home, and Michael is still holding on to his idol at that point, then at the final 10 he for sure plays his idol, which would have idled Laurel out of the game. So with Laurel out of the game, that's one less GOAT Dom and Wendell have to work with, as obviously she was their main GOAT, and they have to focus to eliminate the real targets, such as Michael, Chelsea, and Kellen. And due to this, I actually think Dom would win the game, as he isn't showboating for jury votes like he did originally, which ultimately cost him the victory. And Wendell doesn't have Laurel as a tie-breaking vote. But if we were to see a tie again, I think Angela would go with Dom because her being on the jury switched her vote from Dom to Wendell. Whereas actually sitting in the final 3 with no time to think about it, I think she would vote for how she was originally going to, with that being of course Dom. So I think Chris, Dom's biggest rival, save himself at the merge, actually leads to Dominic winning the game. Albeit a lot of things have to go right. Like I could easily see Michael playing his idol before the final 10 out of paranoia, Chris winning immunities, etc. But it's definitely interesting to think about. Now into Edge of Extinction, where Aubrey idles out Big Windy in a 1-0 vote. And again, to be fair, if she were to actually play her idol, I'm sure she would vote for one of her common members if she knew they were trying to blindside her. However, this does make the next vote very interesting, as Aubrey is 100% flipping, and I think she'll make that known. And at Tribal, we probably see a scramble between Vic, Eric, and Gavin to save themselves. I think Lesu goes with Vic. I mean, that's definitely who Aubrey would target, which to be fair could cause Lesu to play it safe and vote for one of the guys. But either way, we do lose our first common member in this spot, and I don't really know how Aubrey game plays out from there. She actually might be targeted first at the merge, as she's pretty much an easy vote for everyone at that point. And then at 12, we see what happened at 13, with Lesu targeting each other to save themselves, but Kama uses their votes to blindside Joe. Now, having one less common member might change some things, but really that's as far as I can speculate without just completely guessing. So yeah, the only thing I can say is we lose Victoria due to this idol play, and Aubrey would soon follow after her. That same season, at the final 9, Kelly Wentworth would play her idol to idol out Aurora, and again, this might actually be a blessing in disguise for War Dog, as now he's no longer the biggest threat still around, and Wentworth is. Now here I think people like Ron, Vic, and Julie become the swing votes, as I think Gavin, Lauren, and Wentworth are always against War Dog, while Rick and War Dog were always against Kelly. Since Vic always went with the numbers, I think whoever Ron and Julie decide to go with, that's who goes home. And I think they would vote out Kelly, as Ron I think would feel better shielded by War Dog, and obviously people like Gavin and Lauren will be gunning for War Dog first over him. But either way, I don't think it would end up mattering too much, as War Dog would follow soon after. And maybe people like Ron were able to scoot their way to the final 5. Maybe this season is somewhat different, but I really don't think much changes, and I still think Chris Underwood comes back and wins this season. Now into Island of the Idols with 2 other early boots, the first being Vince. So in this spot, Karishma goes home, and I guess he makes it to the tribe swap? That's the thing, if Vince is still there, do they once again make an unnecessary move and blindside Chelsea? Or do they go the easy route this time at the final 17 in Vince, like they should have done with Karishma? But I mean, either way, it's so early, and that's pretty much as far as you can speculate with the tribe swap coming soon. But I will say I don't have much confidence in Vince. I mean, the fact he got voted out with an idol with only 2 tribals to play it, and was obviously being lied to, is not a good look. But if he is able to survive till the tribe swap, maybe he could lay low enough, but who really knows? Now the very next round, we got Chelsea Walker once again idling out Karishma. Now in this scenario, I do have confidence in Chelsea as opposed to Vince. Like, she obviously gets to the tribe swap, and I think she would know if she could work with the girls again, or flip to the majority. Like, I trust Chelsea making the right move, and doing what's best for her game, and ultimately making a deep run in the game. Then of course there's Kelly at the merge idling out Dan, and honestly who really cares what else happens this season, as obviously that pretty much saves the season right there. But if I had to speculate how Kelly would do, I would say she gets taken out near the next 2 tribals, or ultimately end up in a spot like 5th or 7th place. She probably is being split on with the Noras and Jamals of the world, and probably has to use her second idol soon after playing her first. But if she can survive the split tribal, then maybe she gets far? I mean, she was obviously viewed as a massive threat out there, which could have worked in her favor with people like Janet and Elaine down the stretch. But if I had to bet, I think she probably goes home at the split vote tribal council, barring an incredibly lucky draw. And finally, we got Sophie using her idol to idol out Jeremy and Winners at War. And again, this is another interesting one to ponder. So obviously that was Tony's big chance to blindside not only Sophie, but his partner Sarah. And I know he's Tony, but I don't really think he was willing to risk his real life friendship with Sarah to once again try to blindside Sophie. So at the final 8, I think it goes exactly the same, except it's Sophie and Jeremy's spot with ultimately Kim going home. But then the final 7, I guess it's the same thing with Michelle being targeted, because again, now she doesn't have any advantage. Or maybe while Tony doesn't vote with the majority, he might, give the nod to his secret allies of Nick and Ben to team up with Denise and Michelle to vote out Sophie in a 4-3 vote. And this whole time, Tony is behind Dip, but hiding his allegiance to, his partner in crime, Sarah. And to be honest, that's exactly how I see Sophie going home in some way or the other. I mean, Tony desperately needed her out for his game. And, again, whether it would have got the numbers together or use his idol on himself or someone else to idol her out, I trust, being that he is the best to ever play, that he ultimately would have gotten her out. So if I had to guess, I think Sophie goes home at 7 in the scenario I just mentioned, or Tony passes idol on to Michelle to get Sophie out of the game. So there you have it, guys, all scenarios of where someone was voted out with an idol in their pocket, and how the game might have changed had they played it. Again, some of these are really hard to speculate other than the next couple of rounds, but I do think there are some pretty big changes in Survivor history, like Dom winning Ghost Island the idols being saved, Crazy Day potentially being in a good position to win Samoa, etc. With that said, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and share this video with all your friends, and leave a comment down below of what you think might have happened in these scenarios. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.